teachers preying on students, the rich preying on the poor, Barney Stinson preying on anything that moves. Sexual scenarios between people of radically different ages are always tough to watch. Julie Cooper certainly isn't winning any Parent of the Year awards for her behavior in the first few seasons of The OC. However, sleeping with Luke, her daughter Marissa's ex, was a particularly awful move on her part. At the time, Julie is going through a bit of an identity crisis following her husband's loss of their family fortune through fraud.
Losing as much money as I have is not an impressive accomplishment.
Wanting to recapture her discarded youth, she decides to get in bed with her daughter's high school sweetheart. Marissa is already having a rough go of things between her mom's unhinged behavior and her dad's scandal, and this sly move certainly doesn't help. Instead of coming clean to her daughter, Julie leaves Marissa to discover the truth when she overhears Luke promising Marissa's current boyfriend Ryan that he's ending things with Julie. Not only does Marissa feel the sting of betrayal from Julie and Luke, she feels blindsided by Ryan, who kept the truth from her. To be fair, Ryan is the one who makes sure both parties stop the illicit affair, and it's easy to understand why he feels this is a secret best left unsaid. But the truth always comes out in Orange County, as he should already know. While the show does confirm that Luke is 18 before he and Julie hook up, it doesn't make this extremely contentious scenario between a mother and a high schooler any less creepy. While any relationship between a professor and a student is fundamentally inappropriate, what's particularly disconcerting about the relationship between Professor Asher Fleming and Paris Geller is how normalized it is. Before he and Geller get together, Fleming has already built a reputation for manipulating a new girl into an affair every year. From the very first time Rory witnesses the duo kissing outside their dorm, nothing is easy to watch about their relationship. Thankfully, at least some of the characters who aren't Paris, Fleming, or Fleming's starstruck students are horrified at the very mention of the affair. What's worse, Fleming has little to fear despite the illegality of this situation. The tenured Yale professor knows that if he's caught, the school will probably just sweep the scandal under the rug. In fact, his relationship with Paris was so public that when he ultimately dies of a heart attack, Paris informs Rory that she has actually become the proprietor of his estate and is communicating directly with Fleming's family. If Friends teaches us anything, it's to avoid lying about your age. Monica learns this lesson the hard way when she fibs about being 22 to a gentleman caller she believes to be in college. Sadly for her, he also lies about his age, and in the episode The One with the Ick Factor, Monica winds up hooking up with a 17-year-old as a result. Of course, there are plenty of questionable scenarios throughout Friends' run, but this situation is pushing it, even by classic sitcom standards. Not only is this age gap uncomfortable, it's illegal. Even more disturbing, Monica only learns the truth after they've done the deed, and fans have to witness way too much of her massively inappropriate exchange with the teenager.
You're not a senior?
Oh, I'm a senior.
Monica at least feels gross about it, but the one-episode inclusion is wholly unnecessary. Later in the show, Frank and Alice's relationship presents similar ickiness. Phoebe's brother is freshly 18 when he dates 44-year-old Alice. Not only do they get married way too quickly and ask Phoebe to serve as a surrogate, they also have a horrifyingly intense PDA problem. The cringe doesn't end there, though. Ross later dates a student from his NYU class, and Monica has a long-term relationship with an older family friend who knew her as a child. While many of the situations in Friends wouldn't exist on TV today, the show's approach to age gap relationships is especially off-putting. There are many aspects of Glee that have aged poorly, and many of them involve the show's bad boy, Noah Puck Puckerman. However, of all the devious circumstances Puck enters throughout the series, his relationship with Shelby Corcoran takes the cake. One would think that a new mother like Shelby, who actually adopted Puck's biological daughter, would have more sense than to risk getting her child taken away. But no, as soon as Puck sings "Waiting for a Girl Like You" to her, all reason goes out the window and she kisses him. Their difference in age isn't the only contentious part of their relationship. Shelby is also Puck's teacher, which he poignantly highlights by performing Van Halen's Hot for Teacher in class. On the one hand, Puck is desperate to be a dad to baby Beth and likes the idea of having an instant family. He starts making advances toward Shelby soon after she allows him to see Beth. Unfortunately, she loves the attention he gives her and isn't keen on the single mom dating scene, so she barely pushes back. Watching Puck brag to her about his sexual prowess is almost as uncomfortable as watching them kiss. Unable to be the adult in the room, Shelby ultimately leaves altogether in search of a new life, facing zero consequences for being a newly minted predator. How many times does someone need to get fired for fraternizing with students before they get the picture? For Gossip Girl teacher Rachel Carr, the answer is unclear. Given that she teaches students about Shakespeare, you'd think she might be more in tune with the unhappy ending she sets herself up for. Ms. Carr gets fired for creepily hanging out with Dan in a way that doesn't seem particularly healthy to the school's administration. However, instead of proving them wrong and keeping things innocent with Dan, she immediately throws caution to the wind and strikes up an actual relationship with her nerdy student. Of course, in a Shakespearean twist of fate, Ms. Carr gets rehired, but doesn't end her affair with Dan. Instead, she takes their teacher-student bond to the next level by giving him a key to her place with a handwritten note. Given how heated their relationship gets, it's probably for the best that she comes to her senses while getting intimate with her student in a costume closet. Realizing what she's doing, she does the responsible thing and opts to leave the school and go home to Iowa, leaving Dan in peace. Why Women Kill takes the sugar mama dynamic to the next level. Rita Castillo gave up her youth to marry a rich man out of a belief that she would inherit his wealth upon his death, though the old-timer foils her plan by staying alive.
It's the role you hired me for.
With Rita's own husband decades her senior, the resentful housewife takes a leaf out of his book and finds a young plaything of her own. Rita manipulates struggling actor Scooter Polarsky into doing her bidding, slowly but steadily entrapping him. Though she has nothing but contempt for her husband, she mimics his behavior in her treatment of Scooter. Everything between the pair is a negotiation, and not an especially fair one. Rita uses her wealth and status as a weapon, making it impossible for Scooter to get out of their relationship. Every kiss between these two reminds fans that she's caging him, and it's more than a little tough to watch. Most horrifyingly, Rita refuses to let Scooter have any relationships of his own, while treating him like a possession rather than a partner. On Community, middle-aged Jeff Winger spends his entire friendship with college student Annie Edison talking about how she's too young for him, yet he frequently implies she's irresistible and that he has no choice but to give in to her charms. At every turn, Jeff ping-pongs between interest and disinterest in a very uncomfortable way, and while Annie may not actually be underage, a 10 to 15-year age gap is incredibly suspect when the younger party is an 18-year-old. The fact that the characters involved are keenly aware that the dynamic isn't okay makes it somehow even worse to witness.
Shouldn't have brought it up. Just reminded me of my dad. Anyway.
Little Makeout 101, less dad talk.
Jeff and Annie have a total of 8 kisses in the series, and they're all pretty gross. The power imbalance just never gets out of the way and makes their will-they-won't-they relationship sketchy at best. It doesn't help that the show also can't quite resist sexualizing Annie, even as it jokes about that very thing.
Annie's pretty young. We try not to sexualize her.
I'm sorry. Whoa!
How could we have a list of predatory romances without mentioning Chef Jeff Raycraft, the skeevy boss who hires people so he can try to sleep with them in Switched at Birth? While Jeff may not realize that his paramour, Daphne Vasquez, is a high school student when he gets involved with her, it's certainly not the underage teenager's responsibility to prevent adults from taking advantage of her. Even if she were the college student he assumes she is, the dynamics are still off considering he's her boss. Chef Jeff is a fully grown adult and the head chef of a classy restaurant. That kind of position requires a certain amount of experience that a doe-eyed teenager just doesn't have. Yet even after Jeff discovers that Daphne is still in high school, he doesn't push her away in the back stockroom when she comes on to him. Instead, he opts to make out with a teenager in their place of business. Luckily, Daphne's friends and family don't normalize this relationship, so the show itself isn't framing this strange coupling in a positive light. Barney Stinson of How I Met Your Mother has an infamous playbook, which is essentially a how-to guide to trick women into sleeping with him. And his favorite pastime is trolling bars for drunk women who are barely legal, if that. In fact, he even has a test to decide whether or not a woman is too old to sleep with. To gauge their age, he asks if they think Ewoks in Star Wars are cute. If they do, they were probably pretty young when the movie came out, which means they're young enough to be attractive to him.
They reminded you of?
Our teddies?
They reminded you of your teddies.
His creepiness doesn't end there. If Barney's not getting young women plastered before sleeping with them, he's filming them during sex without their consent or knowledge. He also uses hundreds of ploys to attract them, like pretending to be a dying man or feigning a ridiculous time travel story. As a result, nearly every kiss Barney has in the show is another step towards his place on the sex offender registry. His whole changed man shtick at the end of the series just isn't believable after all of the nastiness he displays in the years leading up to the change. Intimacy between mortal humans and ageless vampires tends to feel less taboo because there isn't a visually obvious age gap. One classic example of this phenomena is Angel and Buffy from the cult classic TV series Buffy the Vampire Slayer. At first glance, Angel looks like a college student, yet the reality is much more sinister. Buffy is a 16-year-old dating a 269-year-old reformed serial killer. To make matters worse, Angel knowingly seeks out Buffy to relieve the persistent guilt of his past by supposedly protecting her, though it looks a lot more like stalking from the outside. Though Angel puts up minimal resistance to Buffy's initial crush, he never comes clean about his identity until the truth emerges in Season 1. Instead of having a serious conversation, he terrifies her when his vampire face emerges while they're hooking up. Then, rather than explain himself, Angel throws himself out of her window, leaving Buffy betrayed and confused. Sure, Buffy has to grow up way faster than any teen should, but this relationship is all kinds of shady and controlling. Even after Angel breaks up with her in Season 3, Buffy's watcher Giles really should have done more to convince Angel to stop their relationship before it began. As an important father figure in Buffy's life, he really seemed to slack off by letting his pseudo-daughter develop a relationship with a centuries-old predator. Fans of The Vampire Diaries either love or hate Damon Salvatore, but no matter which way you sway, there's just no excusing what he does to Caroline Forbes in Season 1. In this universe, vampires can mystically compel people to follow their desires. It doesn't take a genius to realize that there can't be any kind of consent to sexual activity when someone is quite literally capable of controlling your mind. Damon wastes no time getting creepy. In episode 2, he aggressively bites Caroline's neck, igniting their one-sided relationship. Over the course of their time together, Damon uses, abuses, and ultimately discards the sheriff's daughter. Not only is she 16 years old, making her well over 100 years Damon's junior, Damon actively talks down to her when they're together, making her feel that much more awful about the situation. On some level, she doesn't even know what she's upset about because he's toying with her mind and muddling her memories. Damon isn't the only creepy vampire around either. Stefan starts a relationship with Elena without telling her his age, vampire status, or the fact that he's stalking her because she looks like his allegedly dead ex. Yeesh. Vampires suck in general, but that sucks.